Dublin City Council has about 24,000 dwellings. 8,000 of them are flats, and 2,500 of those are this four-storey, we call them deck access type. And examples of that would be Markovich House, Pierce House, Oliver Bond. About half of them are protected structures, listed buildings. But even the ones that are not are important parts of the social and building history of Dublin.
The history of Ballybough House is inextricably linked to the history of slum clearance. This building is one of 21 schemes that were designed and built from the early 1930s and occupied in stages during the Second World War and into the 1940s. One of the first things they did was appoint a housing architect to Dublin Corporation. That architect was called Herbert Sims, and he seemed to run a very well-oiled machine to make as many houses as possible through the 1930s. The team came up with a very particular building type, and that is a block of about 45 metres long, 4 storeys high. Between 1932 and 1939, over 1,000 flats were built in Dublin City. They must have represented something really new and different. The team came up with a very particular building type, a staircase per range, and then these continuous balconies called decks. There's lots of lovely features, there's playful corners. We can't look past these flats. They really are an exemplar of Irish architectural modernism.
Because the buildings are old and the flats in them are quite small and they're quite hard to heat, there are suggestions that they should be knocked down and replaced with new buildings. We have found that we can quite successfully upgrade flats. So we've done it already in 3 blocks of Dolphin House, in St. Teresa's Gardens. Some were done just for temporary use. And in St. Bricken's, a small little development, we actually brought the flats up to Passive House standard, which means they use very little energy.
The pilot amalgamation here at Ballybough House seeks to provide Dublin City Council with a template for retrofitting these flats, where we knock 2 into 1 and provide warmer, more spacious family homes. We try to work with the building because it's a protected structure. To strip it out, we took out the PVC windows, we stripped wall linings from the inside of the walls, we lifted the floor screed, and we removed the services. Our demolitions were quite minimal in that we really just removed some lighter partitions. We made 1 new opening in the spine wall, and we retained the door openings as much as possible. So we were left with the bones of the original structure, which is solid brick walling. On the outside, we've got some pebble dash concrete to the front. There were still surprises when we carried out the demolitions. We found there was a 50mm step in the slab. The window lintels were unique to each window, which was really surprising. And also the amount of reinforcement in the concrete spine walls as well. When the flats were built 80 years ago, they were heated by lighting a fire in the living room. And the walls would have been regularly lime washed to keep the mould at bay. The bricks used in the building are very porous. They do soak up more moisture, but also when the homes are heated on the inside, it would help to dry them out during the wetter months. We insulated it with a cork-based lime plaster. It allows the solid brick walls to function and it doesn't trap moisture. And we put in new triple glazed aluminium windows, but the fenestration pattern replicates the original steel windows, which is true to the character of the building. Once we improved the thermal envelope of the building, we could utilise modern heating technologies. So the flat is heated by a heat pump. A heat pump extracts renewable heat from the air, which is an energy efficient process. And this will reduce the heating bills by about 80%.
Because of climate change, it's very important to reduce carbon emissions from building. In Ireland, buildings account for about 20% of our carbon emissions. New flats would emit much less carbon than these existing ones do. But to build those uses a huge amount of carbon. So there's a good argument from a carbon point of view for keeping buildings. The idea is that you could do something similar in all 3 blocks of Ballybough House, but you might not necessarily take 2 flats and make 1. You might take 3 flats and make 2. so that there are 112 flats at the moment. You might maybe get to 75, much bigger, better flats. And we've undertaken this pilot project just to show that we could quite successfully bring the flats up to modern standards of space and energy performance.
This flat's be improved on all the flats. All the flats, like the dampness in here is something terrible. The room-wise, space-wise, that's what it's lacking. But this is giving us some hope that families can have a proper meal, somewhere to wash properly.
I think it's gorgeous, yeah. I think it's well deserved that we do need it in the flats. Flats that we're living in now is in bits. But this is a good start.
The meaning of these flats in the city, linking them to Herbert Sims, but also linking them to their legacies that in fact we've been passing them by and ignoring them and not realising that they were disclosing a really important part of who we are and our whole kind of emotional and historic DNA. By now, we can really see them as part of our urban heritage or urban history. I don't think any of us could imagine a Dublin without these buildings.
What we hope to show with this pilot project is that we can keep these buildings in use, make a significant contribution to reducing carbon emissions. And we hope that what we learn here can be applied to at least 2,500 other flats in Dublin.